It's 7:34, and this meeting of the RTM Finance and Budget Committee is now starting.
Question is caller one, Peter?
I'm here.
Yes. Yeah, that's Peter. I'm sorry. I knew that. I should have told you. Barry will not be able to make it, or if he does, he'll be coming later. I just want to go over a couple quick things. The Board of Ed final meeting will be on the 14th for when they do their final decisions. I think that's what I was just told. Hold on for a second. Yeah. The Board of Ed will be doing their additions and their reductions at next meeting on the 14th. So we'll go from there. I think I had the Board of Ed first. I sent out their meeting of the 31st. The superintendent and Rich Rudel and administration went through certain proposals of what they might put on the table for reductions or other things going through there based upon the request of the Board of Ed. There was a memo that I sent to you. They went through it on the 31st. I'm not going to comment on any of it because there's enough things on the table. There was some discussion. I missed that meeting because I was at the Board of Selectmen meeting, and apparently every time I was trying to watch it, I had a call from Dr. Adley. I had a call from somebody else on the board. So I had to keep pausing it to get through it. But it was a good meeting. I think they have enough things there that will generate what they need to do. I don't know if anybody has, please read that document. If anybody has any questions or anything that they feel strongly about, let me know so I can send it over to Duke so he's aware of it. But otherwise, I believe we've made certain comments. If there's more that has to be made, we'll make them. But otherwise, it's now in their hands. But so are there any comments on the Board of Ed or anything that they've done lately?
I think the memo that you provided, the summary recap, if anyone hasn't had a chance to read that, that'll recap and bring you up to speed on where they are, what cuts they're looking at. So I thought it was pretty self-explanatory.
And they have a spreadsheet that with like real little numbers. I said jokingly to Dr. Adley if whether or not he was doing something to test my eyes. And he asked if I wanted it any bigger. And the answer is no, I actually know how to make an Excel spreadsheet larger so I can actually read it. But yeah, it was real small. I mean, printout, I'm using a magnifying glass to look at. But there's a number of things out there. I'm hopeful that they get under 4. All right. But, that's now in the hands of the Board of Ed. Any other comments? If not, go ahead. Sorry. Iris?
I was just going to say, as with every budget, it's amazing what people can find to cut when they have to.
And, yeah, that brings us to
and why they come in. And anyway, it's just commentary. I'm glad to see they found what they needed to, but it would have been nice if it had been done before they came out with their number instead of freaking everybody out.
Well, they haven't made any cuts yet. This is just things that are on the table. Don't know what will end up being. I'm not going to presuppose where they're going to end up. I don't want to jinx anything or rattle anyone. This is now in their hands. But I think as Jill had said, they've heard from the community that was a very high increase. And John Cini did a very good definition that if you actually look at what their run rate is and then compare what they're actually expected to spend this year, it's really over a 5% cut, increase rather. And even if they bring some of these things down based upon what they will have expended this year, they're still going to be, compared to what's been spent, over a 4%, even with some of the proposed cuts going through. So, yeah, there's just certain things. This may have been the highest budget I've ever seen, other than when we had the special ed situation blow up a number of years ago. So that was a lot of cleanup, but this is something that they're going to have to address. So,
Hey, Jack, I had a question for you. If you did a 10-year CAGR of our education budget, what's that number?
I'll have to look at it. I've seen it over the past. It's not going to be that high because there were a number of years under Brenner and that were about 2%. We had like 2%, 2.5% increases in the budget. So other than the first year where he inherited somebody else's budget, he pretty much kept it under 3%. He came in saying, I've never had a budget greater than 2%. Now, here he did, because where he came from in New York, the Board of Ed has their own reserves, so he could use those reserves for things. But he was consistently under 3. So that's going to make it look lower, but it's almost a hockey stick type of result. But I'll see if I can find the numbers. Someplace along the line.
I'm just curious because anyway, I do feel that it's important that we try and draw a line in the sand and set expectations. I mean, it isn't a, we're not running a cookie jar here where you can reach into the cookie jar and pick out anything that sounds interesting.
Yes, and that I think our committee made that reasonably clear. I apologize for the last meeting that we had with the RTM education. What my intentions at the end of that meeting was to do what I'm going to do again today, is just finalize what people want to do on the Board of Selectmen budget, the joint meetings, and get that moving. But also I was going to go through the budget because John Cini had mentioned, instead of saying it's too high, what's the right number? And I think we were close to, and could have said, here's how we think you can get to the number, some of it without really affecting instructional value in that. Two of the things that I've recommended, and again, this is contingent upon the where the Board of Ed goes, but they're looking to possibly purchase 2 additional Suburbans that will reduce our transportation costs, because we're paying a premium for some of those short hauls or out of district placements, transportation wise, typically because they can't find drivers, but we can, and it gives us a lot more flexibility. However, there's an additional stage that Rich Rudel explained. And Tara asked the question, which I'm glad she did, because I didn't understand why he had said this initially, and then he explained it, is that they have to go to P&Z to get approval from P&Z before they can purchase the 2 additional Suburbans, which makes absolutely no sense of why planning and zoning would get involved, until Rich explained that planning and zoning only gave the Board of Ed approval for parking 4 Suburbans at 35 Leroy. And so they have to get that expanded so that they can park 6. So they have to get approval by P&Z. I've suggested, based upon the order to delivery dates, that they potentially take those offline, as we've done in the past, and bring them to Board of Finance and to the RTM maybe as early as April, because then as soon as we approve, 14 days later, they can put in the order. That gives them a 2-month additional lead time to go get the Suburbans out there. Otherwise, they can't do it until July 1st. Same thing on the work on the auditorium, whatever they believe they are going to do or not going to do. That's again their decision. But the young lady was talking about getting contractor, project manager, and that. Theoretically, she can't get a project manager until the funds are available. And if we keep those capital items in the budget, then they're not available to July 1st. And since they want to do the work in July and August, that reduces the time. So again, this is something else once they make a decision to bring it forward to the Board of Finance and the RTM. Early approval would allow them to sign the contract and potentially start work as early as June. So those were some of the
They can't start work as early as June because the auditorium is in use throughout July.
Well, I think that was part of the stuff that they were looking at. So I know that the auditorium is in use. That was one of the things they were discussing. But it matters what, if they're just doing certain sound stuff that they can do at certain times without affecting what the use is. Plus, you probably have from graduation to the end of June where you can initiate certain things. But at least if it's equipment, you can have things ordered and ready to go. So it's not that you're first ordering in July and hoping that it gets here by August. So, but again, they're going to need to be able to have a project manager to plan out how much work it really takes, what the time frame is, and when they can do it. And if you're starting to do that in July, that's not, from a project management perspective, I would say that's cutting it a little close. So, but yeah. What do they do in July that it's in use, Beth?
There's a theater summer, what's it called? Musical theater workshop. It's a summer camp that one of my children will be in for the 3rd year running. That goes from, it's the whole time that Darien Summer School's in session. So it's the last week of June and then all of July.
Wow. Just
That
out of
is a
curiosity,
program.
My understanding was they're planning to work around MTW.
Yeah. I mean, that's what they said. I was just sort of like, considering the amount of work that needs to be done, I mean, they definitely would need a project manager sooner rather than later because it's a substantial amount of stuff they have to work around.
well, yes, I will only say that all that audio stuff is out of my expertise. I did ask what the life expectancy was, because while this one lasted a very long time, my daughter was the first freshman class in Darien High School, the new Darien High School, and she's now 32, 33. So it's lasted quite a long time, like 20 years. But I don't think that, based upon technology and that these systems last 20 years anymore. So that's just for if somebody wants to consider bonding or anything else on that. Anything else on the Board of Ed? If not, we can move on to the Board of Selectmen budget. Jenny, do you want to start, or Bert start on the your view of the Board of Selectmen budget?
Sure. Mostly I'm covering debt and investments with Bert, and then Parks and Rec with Barry. And I did have a chance to listen to the library proposal, which is, I'm not sure who on our committee is covering that, but I I don't have any comments on
Louisa and
that.
Iris
Is it
will be
Iris?
covering that.
Okay. So the Parks and Rec budget is Kate made some cuts. I think the proposed the proposed increase on that budget is like 3.5%, right? Jack, at this point, and I know Kate made some cuts. One thing there Pam Geary was looking to do is to eliminate 4 part-time positions and replace it with a full-time position, and in the name of efficiency and the fact that they're having trouble finding all the part-time people. Kate made the cut for that because she felt the job description was the job description to try to fill those roles had very different skill sets. So we'll wait and see, if that comes back in the budget or not. That the other items that some of the cuts that came out, Kate did kind of queue it up for the Parks and Rec Commission to ask to have it put back in the budget. The 2 items were there's a solar powered aerator for Cherry Lawn Pond that I can't remember.
Right now, it's not in the budget. I'd like to keep it out.
Okay.
The fact of the matter is, and let me just start with this. This budget is, again, over 5%. And so it's actually higher because, some of the things when they're reporting, sometimes they're reporting on what the addition of capital or debt is. Basically, it's too high.
On
And
the
so,
overall budget.
yeah,
Yes.
the overall budget's too high.
The overall,
So,
I was talking about the Parks and Rec budget.
yeah,
came
so
in.
in
that
other
high?
words, because if we're cutting capital and the overall budget is too high, you can't add things back in. I mean, because that accomplishes nothing. And, there's an old saying, you can't always get what you want, you get what you need. And so while there's an aerator, and it'd be nice to have it so the Black Lagoon actually has water in it, it just it gives something else up.
Well,
I'm just expressing my opinion. There comes a
yes.
point, and if they really want to reduce their budget, they have refused to do service charges on their programs. They've refused to do service charges on the beach sticker, and that could be substantial money that could add back in. They just refuse to. So I'm not going to do service charges to sort of offset this, and I'm going to keep asking for more until somebody says no.
I spoke with Lori.
I know that service charges are your pet peeve, but it's my pet peeve to be charged a service charge. I'd rather you just raise your fees than charge me a service charge. They make me insane.
This was a topic.
It make other people insane, like to be service charged to death.
I know the IT steering committee is looking at that, and I spoke on the first night when I talked to Jay-Z and some people afterwards. That came up in the finance director's budget because they're looking to add a part-time analyst to help cover. They need $15,000 to hire a part-time position to help with the reconciliation of all the payment processing, and that led to a kind of other discussion about how the town they're looking at it on how problem is every department has their own way of processing payments
and their own merchant processor, which means that we're paying the highest rate on merchant processing because you don't get the bulk that goes in there. So I'm just there. I know it's simple, but like the beach stickers are really deadly because the 35-cent transaction fee is is high compared to the unit price, and then you first have the merchant fee on top of that. So I'm just saying that there's certain things that they should look
There's
at.
potential
The
more
schools
savings
do
there for sure.
everything now. Everything in the school has a service charge on payments. And while it's a pain in the neck, it has saved a significant amount of money, and the accounting for it is a lot simple. So I'm just that I'm not against using it in certain payments. Checks are harder to process anyway, as is cash. But once you have that service charge, you can do a lot of things online. That's
Right.
my.
So as the town takes a harder look at it, and Jack did ask in the meeting to have program revenues and beach permits and all I'm just talking about Parks and Rec right now, that they break out revenues and what the town is paying on processing fees, because we suspect that number is pretty big, which will lead to probably a town-wide policy decision on what they're going to do going forward. And if that's the case, there could be significant money. Yeah, they could be paying up to 3%, maybe a little more, on certainly credit card fees. And Iris, I hear you, but if there's an option for a resident or a customer to pay by check, or pay by debit card, or pay by Apple Pay, or pay by Google Pay, or any other pay, if people pay by credit card for reasons other than, A, they want the points, B, they don't have the money right now and they want to pay for the service, whatever the reason, when you create options for people to make the decision on how they want to pay, most municipalities, I would guess all of the municipalities, I know for a fact that Wilton they do they surcharge.
Stanford does the same.
Yeah.
I think we should figure out what that money is and cover that money. I'm not suggesting that at all. I just think that we should have our costs, our prices in line with, so that we are covering that cost versus adding a fee. And if they're going to give us more options to pay than just with a credit card, whether it's checks online, which I pay a lot of bills using my checking account, getting my number directly in, or if they're going to give us all of that, then I have a different opinion. But when my only option to be cashless is my credit card,
agreed,
then I think that that's kind of a service of the town. And
right. So as they discuss this, they're going to be discussing the policy.
Iris, wait, let me add in there.
Not as the F&B person.
Iris, I am fully in agreement that we do not offer direct debit into checking accounts. Debit card fees are like 35 cents as opposed to a credit card. So you put in your little PIN and all of a sudden it reduces the price significantly. The problem also is that we've been recording revenues net. So we're not seeing the revenues on one side and what the merchant processing fees or bank fees expenses are in the expense side. So that's kind of blinds them.
I get you. I'm just
I just want to know what those numbers are.
We'll get to see that. So, and just lastly on the Parks and Rec budget, I'm going to disagree with you, Jack. I think that for
I know you want the aerator
I want the aerator because that park that's the crown jewel of Darien at this point, and it looks.
So what isn't the crown jewel that they don't need to do then? I'm going to ask you the same question I'm asking them.
I don't know yet.
Have anything. So what do you say you don't need?
Well, I think I understand why, Kate, if you keep the 4 part-time employees, you pick up almost $40,000. So the proposed budget, the cut that she made is,
that's not where the cut was coming from. What Kate is looking to do is possibly pay for some of the capital expenses out of Park and Rec out of the ARPA funds. So because they're paying for it out of ARPA funds, that potentially frees up some capital expense. That doesn't mean we're saving money. We're saving what we're taxing, but it doesn't mean that you then get to fill it up. And part of the reason it was moved to ARPA is to reduce the taxes. That's the part that's missed. So look,
Well,
it's the same thing I'm asking. Give me something to give up as opposed to just adding something on. I have no problem. I'd like to see it aerated too, but tell me what you have for 25, 50,000 that you're willing not to do. You know, I'm not hearing that from them. And if I heard that, like, you know, you cut this one, you know, but I'd rather you do this one and not do that. Instead, what they said is just add it on to the budget. So what's the difference between that and the Board of Ed coming in with a 5% budget? It's not, there's no difference. Plus, they have certain $1 million projects that were taken off because the Board of Selectmen had made a ruling that any town project that's over $1 million needs a building committee and needs additional scrutiny. So the work at Pear Tree is moved off. The Lori's not going to like what I call it. The 1 mile walk to no place, the Meadows Walk, is going to go into a separate project. So it's not as if these things aren't also coming down the road that for review by the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and Board of Ed. So there's another $2 million worth of projects that we're not even seeing in this budget. That's why I'm saying, you know, suck it up on the other. But anyway, the fact of the matter is it's a 6% increase. And we don't need to go fully through each of the areas. I just wanted, you know, as long as everybody understands this is a 5-6% increase. And one of the things that I haven't had the chance to do is they're telling just about their expenses. They haven't netted from their incomes. So the Board of Ed, when we look, is a net between any revenues they're getting and the expenses. I like to be able to look at that because some of the people that they're adding are, in theory, generating income. But we also found that you know, they're adding somebody in the fire marshal area to do inspections, but we don't get paid for the annual expenditures that they have to do. So one of the things that was said at the end of the meeting was, and Malin was there during this, you know, everybody thinks that we have all this revenue coming in from the developments, and so we're going to be awash with cash.
Yeah,
the fact of the matter is there's costs associated with those developments that are requiring extra people to go to do inspections for the fire, for the health department, and other things like that. And that's before any of the kids are added into the school system. So it's not as if all of a sudden, we're still going to end up ahead, but it's not as if all of a sudden we have all this money, you know, because there's some services that we have to generate in order to support that. So do you want to, Bert, did you have any comments other than, I'm going to give you the document. I'll see if I can get you what you requested. So, Malin, do you have anything on your, from what you were sitting in on?
You know, this is my first time listening to all of the departments present. I mean, I think for me, it just, it's really not unlike what I often find that I feel when I'm listening to the Board of Ed. Like, it just seems like there's all these new ideas that just come out like this week, like all of, you know, and I would rather just see more planning, I guess is real. I'm not sure that there's a number that I have in mind that I'm comfortable with, but it just seems to me that you should know kind of what you need to maintain your properties. And I think they should have a narrator, by the way. So I agree, Jenny, but maybe you need that and not add something new until you clean up your old. You know what I mean? Like, I guess that's really where I am, is just what's the planning? Like, why does this just all of a sudden come up? So I think that was really my feeling just listening to most of this for the first time. And there's, I guess it's only 4 people being added, 4 FTEs, but on the town side. But I know that's just something. I think we also have a tendency to just add people also. So I think that's just something to keep a lookout on.
Jack,
There
I have
was
a question about the
sure.
healthcare costs.
Yeah.
The way it was explained is we have for years we had very conservative healthcare costs,
Hmm.
and we seem to be in a spike. Can they project based upon what the experience is now, or do we have like the actuarial study that shows what the payouts are going to be on healthcare? I mean, part of our problem is we're actually a pretty small pool, and changes in the behavior of the healthcare premium or costs of our pool when there's a big spike, it's like a big ripple effect, right? So, for years, I mean, there were years over the past, I don't know, when, under the previous administration, there was a couple budget years where we had very low increases on the Board of Selectmen side. And now I think healthcare costs are higher than normal. Do we know, if we can have an expectation that, this is going to taper off, or is there an
The answer,
actuarial study?
the answer is I don't know. But that being said, I do know that healthcare costs are cyclical. Before this bump that the Board of Ed had over the last couple of years, where actually Rich Rudel was talking about that we have one family that has over $500,000 of expenses annually in that, and that if in fact we went to the real experience rate on the Board of Ed, instead of it being a 7% increase, it would have been a 40% increase. Um, so when the town was high, the Board of Ed was low. And every year we'd get, and this is when Betsy was, Haggerty Ross was the chair, we would wait to March and usually get an adjustment lowering the healthcare costs. Lately, it hasn't been that way. So this becomes cyclical. And unfortunately, we're having the cyclical happen to both parts of town at the same time. Some people want to look at whether or not we self-insure. Good luck. I think if we self-insure, that's going to mean at least another individual to make payments and reconcile what's going on. Plus, it may be more expensive than what we're paying, to be honest with you. Don't know.
Jack, because you called on me earlier, taking a step back, I'm spending a lot of time watching the discussions on the budget. I think they really do struggle with the fact that we have higher inflation. They do. Okay, it's unavoidable. Okay, it should have been dealt with more last year when I pointed it out that it was coming. But now we're there and they're struggling with it, and they're really doing an honest job at dealing with it. But I do think where they are weak, both on the Board of Education and particularly on the Board of Selectmen, and we get there eventually, is to deal with the opportunities that come in when inflation kicks in. You're going to suffer on the expenditure side, but you got to look at the revenue side when expenditures are going up. Then hopefully your revenues are going up somewhere. Okay, the first thing is that people will be more accepting of a 4% increase in the budget than it would have been a year or two ago, because inflation is everywhere. Second, the revenues, and you mentioned that we can raise more revenues from fees, I think that is something we definitely need to look at in this environment. We all pay more fees. And the third thing, and I send you something on that, and there will be more discussions, is the revenue from investments. You know, nobody expected 4.75% overnight rates, and maybe in March 5% overnight rates, and stiff rates at 4.5 a year ago. But now that they're there, we do have to visit and revisit the income that we generate from the town's investments.
I do
So
know.
those are the
Okay.
things.
I
That's
I do
it.
know
Okay.
in speaking to Joan that last year she did go and say after the rates in December and March, she did ask whether or not she should recalculate the rate because she did the original budget in November when rates were still zero basically, and she wasn't even making the prior year's numbers on what's going on. Um, but she has said that she wants to recalculate with Jen the rates come March. You know, like you have the rates now, but by March we know what the Fed did today. We'll know if there's another rate increase coming in March, and take another look at this to say where do we think the rates are with the risk? Do we actually think rates are going to be reduced at some time this year? But yes, I would agree. Um, you know, if we overestimate, I mean, that's part of what we have in our general fund to cover. You know, um, so, but yes, while I agree, while inflation is there, and you're in a year of inflation, the question then becomes exactly what Malin said. Do, do you move forward with all of these initiatives or all these hires this year? Do you, you know, do you look at different aspects? I'd like to take another look at the Board of Finance contingency. It's at 250,000. They're lucky that they're going to spend 100,000 this year. Well, that's 2 mill rates reduction. You know, that at the end of the year we just sweep into the general fund. Since the RTM can meet on 48 hours notice and approve anything, I really don't think that there's a lot that we can't handle, and therefore the immediate need for that is less because we now have the right to have virtual meetings. So, I mean, just my opinion, but that's something that I hope to have some conversation on.
Thank you,
Um,
Jack. I just wanted to, point out
I agree.
that inflation is here. Here
Yep.
was it. Okay, both ways. Okay, and things have to be looked at differently than they had in the past. Um, and we will go into the details of much of that going forward. I think the boards are working hard on getting a reasonable budget together, as they always do. And our input is important. In the end, it's us, though, who will make a recommendation to the full RTM. And I'm not there yet now. Okay, it's just too early.
Hey, Bert, just on that point of inflation, right? I mean, if you look at corporate America, you would be hard pressed to find a large corporation that is not engaging in cost cuts, sometimes massive, sometimes modest, to help deal with inflation. Now, I'm not saying that we should be in the position of rolling out actual cost cuts and firing people, but it's just bizarre to me that in an economy where cost cuts are the name of the game, that we have a board of selectmen proposing a 5% cost increase. I mean, that's just completely out of tune with commercial reality in the world. So I understand if we said, listen, we don't want to be in that position, and there are services that we need to provide or what have you, but we just can't. It's otherwise it's just completely out of whack with real life.
Well,
I mean,
that's it.
Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead, Bert.
That's
Go
my
ahead, Chuck.
perspective.
No, go ahead.
No, Bert, go ahead.
Corporations are different than municipalities, though, Charles. Okay. We need to provide the services on a ongoing basis, and we can't cut back and rehire, in different cycles. We have to be
I
honest.
understand there are differences, Bert, but I'm merely saying
So
the,
I understand
the
where
mill
you're
rate. I've
coming
lived in
from.
town. I've lived in this town for 14 years, and things are and the mill rate, the head count, and it's going up quite consistently for 14 years since I've been here. And I just think it's our job as RTM to say, like, that's not. What are we going to do? We're going to do that ad infinitum.
Okay, so I'm a numbers guy, and that's how corporations are run, actually, and everyone knows that. So if the Board of Education has 5%, and a 5% increase in the budget, and and the Board of Selectmen 6%, that is not something that we can sell to the taxpayer, obviously. Okay. The taxpayer will be tolerant of a 3 or 4% increase. They know about inflation, and they know how we're doing better and better with the schools and school security and all the other things, but we can't push it. We can't make it so that people will resist it. And I think the right number for me, if I had started out, is the number that the Board of Finance gave as a guidance. I don't know where that goes with the guidance. Jack, remember the guidance?
3.5%.
That's
How
what
much?
I would have thought would be very reasonable. And let the Board of Finance get there. And if they don't, I think we have to go back and say, guys, the power of compounding is such that you're gonna hurt the people living in Darien more than you provide additional services. Yes, you do, but you're gonna hurt them financially and in the value of their property. That's an issue. And the power of compounding, when you go in the Board of Education from 110 million budget to 116. And I remember I was already on the RTM when it was 75. That is jumping now quite quickly. Okay. And people are sensitive to that. Not only the people who live here, but the people who want to buy here. They like grade schools, but it's jumping up. At that rate, it is unacceptably, for me, unacceptably high. And so something has got to give. But I think that people are all the boards are working on that. They know the issue. Inflation is everywhere. Okay, I understand.
Well, I'm going to go and build on something that Charles said. You know, we're not going to cut people, all right? That especially on the town side, we have great turnover anyway. But is this the year? I know they did this emergency services study. This may not be the year in which you implement the fire coordinator, the fire department coordinator, or it may not be the year that you go and get a full-time emergency management individual. Those are the things that you say, we haven't been operating with these for a number of years. Maybe this is a year that we just say, look, yes, we want this, but we'll deal with this in fiscal year 25, because with all the inflation that's going up, we do anticipate that over time, that the cost of petroleum will lower again. Some of the other costs that we're picking up will lower, and that's part of what we have to anticipate. I'm assuming that that we will have some deflation in some of this of what's going on. And remember at one time the barrel of oil was over $100. I didn't see what it was trading today, and all my oil stocks went down. So I'm assuming that it's lower again. But it was about 75. And from what Ed Gentile told me at one time, it may take 6 months for a year for the price of oil to get into the price of asphalt. So while that was up, it took a year to start getting expensive, and so we deferred certain things. But as the oil comes down, we could see a reduction in future years. But these are the things that I want them to look at, because going line by line in these budgets and saying, oh, well, you increase supplies by $500, reduce it. It's just ludicrous. It's more of a philosophy and this is one of the things I spoke to Kate at the end. What's happening in your core business? So that's where we would see inflation. Are we seeing the fuel costs going up? Are we seeing that we have to buy tires and the tires have gone up? But when we're adding additional staff, that's growth. When we're adding an additional program on that's growth. And how much of the increase is associated with growth versus salary increases and other things along that line? Back a number of years ago, Jay-Z talked about that hiring one FTE will cost $7.5 million over the course. Last night's meeting, he happened to mention hiring 2 FTEs, let's say in public works, making $60,000 a year, is the equivalent of the entire cost of the 20-year debt for the shuffle, which was, a big controversial discussion. Not that we're making comment on the shuffle one way or another, but the shuffle was looked at with greater inspection than we do with hiring these 2 employees. And that's the point. That's where we have to get people back to saying, every time we're hiring an FTE, if we're going to do the hiring emergency, they went through some of the report at various times, but this really should have been discussed, in my opinion. I think it's the same thing that Melinda was saying also. How come we didn't hear about this, that we are thinking of hiring this in the budget in November? So that there can be a full discussion of, these are the 2 positions we're doing 2 things. What are we going to do? Oh, look at the rest of what's going on in the budget. Should we be hiring them? And that's, I think, the only way that we're going to get things. Are there any other comments? If not, I'd like to get done with some of the assignments. I have some people here. Where's Bill? Are you on for a second?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Bill, do you recall what you did last year? Because I can't find the list. Well, what do you want to do?
Do the fire departments?
Perfect. Malin will be working with you on the fire departments. I need somebody to do, the general government, town administrator, HR, finance department treasurer, board of finance, tax collector, legal, probate, and that. Is there anyone it's not really tough. There's no real increase in that. Is there anybody who's willing to take a look at those?
Me.
Okay. Thank you, Bert. Land use, planning and zoning. Amy Z is new to this. I promised that we would give her to support. And and will help. But is there somebody willing to look at the building department and planning and zoning and work with Jeremy on that? They would be working with Amy Z. Go ahead, Jenny, and tell me what her last name is again.
Sabatakis.
Thank you. Yeah, my name is Davis. Like Gassarood and other things don't roll off my tongue like that. Von Stupidego, because I was married to a German, does. But Amy's really good. But is there somebody willing to take on planning and zoning and building departments? Going once. Iris, thank you. On community and environment, I have Barry and Jenny. You guys will be, go ahead.
Are you gonna like send me the information of what I'm supposed to do? Thank you.
Yeah. And I'll help a little bit because it's one of the areas that I have to look more at. A community environment, which does beautification, celebrations, and community grants. Harbor Master is Barry and Jenny. Interesting enough, added to the budget is town now paying for fireworks. The
and that's not going to be a small number.
Yeah, I think it was about 50,000.
Yeah, so they had but it's misleading because there's only like 18 in it for now because they had money left over from last year or something. They had money left over to pay for it, but going forward, it's actually 40, something like that. So yeah.
Who paid for the fireworks before?
It's always been done by private donors, and they're not doing it anymore.
Yeah.
So if the town wants fireworks, the town's gonna have to pay for fireworks.
Yeah. Our donors exploded and aren't doing it anymore.
Not doing it anymore.
Anybody wants to?
Went up.
I'm sorry?
That was a bad remark. I take it back.
No, it was a good remark.
I said it's because their taxes went up.
Perfect. Love it. That's my type of line.
But we go to New Canaan and Stanford to watch the fireworks.
Right. Thank you. Exactly.
I actually sit on my porch and watch them from Woodway and New Canaan. So yeah, and I think I'm old enough that I've seen enough that okay, fine, it's fireworks. Fortunately, my dog didn't go nuts when they were going off. But anyway, Malin has police. Does anybody want to do police? I'm not going to tell you that it's going to do away with any tickets, but Chief Anderson.
Jack, even if I wanted, my son is now a civil dispatcher at the Darien Police, and I'm disqualified.
You're out of it. Yeah, you can't do that.
Okay.
I might get more tickets if I got on it.
Okay, right now we just have Malin. Emergency management, that really isn't that touch other than they want to do a director. And so I have Malin on that. Charles, I have you on public works. You also have, we have an advantage here. You're going to be working from the RTM with Mark Adaletta, who was on our committee last year, who was previously the chair of Public Works before Monica was the chair, before Ralph was the chair. And so he's back as chair, and Jeff Krause will also be working on that. So that's a really strong team. And I was able to negotiate that when we really come to talk about Public Works, we're also going to invite Mark Adaletta to join us because he knows the nits and gnats of that really well. So that's a good person to learn from. He's really excellent. Debt service, I have Bert and Jenny. And, on the recreation program, I have Barry and Jenny. I'm going to take care of capital excess cost and some fund balanced issues. Rob Codone and Jim Palin, anybody else who wants to join me on it. Werner, I need you to step up and tell me what you want to do on the Board of Selectmen budget.
Who's doing library?
Iris and Louisa.
Feel free to put me wherever you need some help.
What committee? I know you were on education for a while, but you went off of it, didn't you? What committee were you on?
Every committee. I was on Parks and Recreation for a long time. I was on Planning, Zoning, and Housing. I think I was on Public Works too, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, I thought you were.
Yeah, most recently, I was on Planning, Zoning, and Housing.
Do you mind if I have you cover that and work with Amy at all with that? And I'll work with you, but I just.
Yeah, but where do you want me to work on?
I'll have you in Planning and Zoning, and that's just looking at their budget.
Yeah, that's fine.
Super, thank you. I appreciate it.
With Iris, right? Iris, you're doing that too?
No, I didn't think we assigned anyone for that.
You did, but I mean, if you'd rather, I mean, I can.
Oh, yes.
I can help Maylin with police if you'd rather switch me. I'm flexible.
I'll put you both down, and I'll just may drop in on occasion, because in the past I was doing library. I'm not doing library. I did ask for an allocation of individuals' time spent. A number of years ago, I'm going to say about 4 or 5 years ago, we actually had salaries and what their allocations was between the Friends and the library. I requested it. It went to Jen and Kate. They asked if I wanted to look at it, and my answer was no. I'm very happy not knowing other people's salaries. So I've requested it again. She can get, Kira can give the salaries to Jen and Kate, but I'm more interested in the time. I'm going to state this openly. You know, shame on me for stating it, but I think that Kira is a wonderful addition to the library, and I believe some of you knew that I was not a big fan of Alan. So, Melinda, you're smiling. I just wasn't getting the answers that I wanted, but I think Kara does a really nice job taking some fresh looks at things, and is showing good leadership. Now, that's my voice doesn't matter at all because I'm not on the library board. But if you don't know, Malin was president of the library and I believe treasurer before that, if I'm not mistaken. I'm putting her on the spot. I'm assuming you agree with my comments on that Kara has brought a set of fresh eyes.
Well, I think after my experience in the library, that's why I get frustrated with some of the other things that I hear in these budget discussions, because the library actually does do, I think, a terrific job of looking ahead. They have a capital plan. They, openly talk about what goals they're trying to do. Money follows goals. So, they're pretty transparent that way. Haven't added FTEs in quite a long time. They're adding 0.2 this year, but that's part-time, just part-time hours, and can explain why they're adding, exactly what it's for. So they're very, very organized. It's very tight over there, I have to say. So
and they watch their investment, because remember, whatever they have in their investment or the trustee, whatever they want to call it, of Friends, is what they use never spending more than 5% on the capital. And everybody's stock portfolio went down in 2022. If they didn't, I should be having you buy my stocks. But so they went down a little bit, but they're very cognizant of where they are on donations, what programs they're having, and they manage that fairly well. So but I think that Kara has been more direct in answering questions as of late. So, and I appreciate that.
She's trying also to work with Kate, which
yes.
Alan did not want to do. And when Kira came, she and I just decided, why are we not answering Kate's phone calls? So that was a change, and one for the better. So
yeah, that open dialogue, there's been some discussion. There is sort of like an agreement between the town and the library. I think it was last written when the British attacked the church that we have pictured in the auditorium. So it's a working relationship that having good communication benefits both parties. And that has changed significantly. And yes, Melinda, I forgot that you were instrumental in getting that done. So thank you. We have some minutes to do. We have a meeting on the 18th, by the way. On the 18th, I'm assuming that there are going to be 2 gifts. I believe one of them is for the gazebo, and there's another gift, I think, for Park and Rec, maybe, or for something. That it may be the 1 mile walk to nowhere. But,
yeah.
18th of what? February?
Beat.
18th.
No, you mean the 15th.
Oh, the 15th. Sorry.
The 18th is Saturday.
Yeah, 18th Saturday.
I kind of lose what day of the week things are anymore. The 15th, we have our next one. We're going to have some items on the agenda. The 14th, the Board of Ed will have voted on their budget, and I believe the town will also be voting shortly thereafter and giving it to the Board of Finance on the 7th. So if you do have a chance to watch the budgets that you hadn't, or before we go to minutes, I have a question. Is everybody currently accessing OpenGov? If you're not, let me know.
I don't know how to do that yet.
Okay.
If I follow those instructions, is that how I get the email generated? Because this is my first time. So I thought Jen had to initiate that, or do I initiate that?
No, you should have already been given. Were you told that you're part of OpenGov?
She sent an email saying.
Yes. Okay. So that was the first. Okay.
Yeah, but she
So
said
Jen asked
we were
me,
getting an email, but I've not gotten one either. So I was sort of on the lookout for it.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll double check with that.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's number one. Number two, Jen has offered to run a virtual tutorial on using OpenGov. And I said I didn't know. I'd ask the committee, but I tend to believe it's probably a good idea that we do that. Because there's certain drop-down things and other things. And once one masters OpenGov, it provides a tremendous amount of information. However, to get there, it's and I'm a big fan of OpenGov on the town side. Governor Kasich implemented it in Ohio and saved over $600 million to to the state of Ohio in the first year by seeing that multiple departments were spending on the same thing. So if used properly, it's a great tool, and all the budgets are done there. So I'll speak to Jen about possibly running a tutorial and make sure everybody understands how to get on. And Charles, I'll make sure that you're on board.
Yeah.
On that.
And me too, Jack.
The only thing I'd like to say, Jack, and is I still think that we should enforce, regular reporting to the RTM from the town government. So I don't want the fact that we have open gov to turn into a model where somebody says, "Oh, you got any questions about the state of our finances? Just log into open gov and figure it out yourself." You know what I mean? I don't want it to be like a tool that just takes work from the town and pushes it onto the committee members in kind of a random, unstructured manner. We should have a process that gives us quarterly updates, budget versus actuals, the whole stuff. Yeah,
I'll bring that
proper commercial management.
Right, I'll bring that to Monica's. I'll bring that to the attention. I think that the Board of Ed is pretty simple. There's monthly reports on the Board of Ed that I can distribute. And as I said, Rich Rudel does a really good job to explain everything. I mean, department by department, but he gives a good summary of it. So a good part of the reporting I did in the last meeting was I told him I'm cut and pasting his report and reporting to the RTM. The town, there is a report that's with every Board of Finance meeting, but I think that it would be nice to have a report from the town side that could also be distributed.
Well, otherwise, they should just give us the same stuff as they get. This committee should get the same stuff the Board of Finance gets. Then we're all working off the same set of numbers.
Well, actually, I can pass that on to you because I go on to the Board of Finance and that. But yeah, I'd like to have a little write-up, a little bit more than just all the numbers and going there. But the package that are given to the Board of Finance that I look at on a monthly basis has all the bonds that we have outstanding, what we've put against it, if we're closing anything out, all of the contingency accounts and what's running there, where we are in the general fund, all the revenues that we have. It also lists at this time all of the ARPA projects that we approved. There was some conversation by Kate last night that some of them are coming in higher than what was anticipated. And if they are going to change where they're allocating money on ARPA, I think they may have to come back to the Board of Finance and RTM on that. I think that's part of what it is. I mean, the Board of Selectmen makes the decision, but I think there may have to be some approvals. I'm just, and this is not a definite, but I think there is some switch up there. But apparently some of the projects that were in ARPA are coming in higher than what we anticipated. And so it's going to be pulled out of ARPA and we're going to have to bond it or go from there. That's the other thing. In the past, we were bonding a lot of stuff because money was free. I mean, it was 2%, pardon me. And it's not that price anymore. So I know some of us, including myself, I don't like bonding anything that's under 500,000 anymore. I think they should be bigger projects. And so that's one of the things that, I'd like this committee to discuss, because I'd like to put our stake in the ground to the Board of Finance saying, yeah, you decide how to pay, but, projects for like 175,000 for sidewalks. Let's just pay for it. I don't care that they last 30 years. The rates are too high, and we have a lot of other bonding things coming down the road. There is another fire engine that should be coming shortly, and it's not going to be cheap. And then we still have Great Island. I was asked, there is no expenses for Great Island in next year's budget. It has its own revenue, special revenue account right now that if and when we do buy it, the income will cover the carrying expenses for the town, and that can handle there. But, I think many people on this committee said, you should take a year to plan. If we do buy it, you should take a year to plan some of your concepts as opposed to going in right away and doing them. So right now, there is nothing in the budget. If we think there should be, then we should let them know. Minutes. Jenny, your show.
I tried to be concise. This was the minutes from our joint meeting with Education and Public Health and Safety. So I don't know if you all had a chance to review it. But if you have any comments or want to add any, I kept it pretty lean because I have links to the videos, but I tried to do a very high level capture of what that meeting was, which was.
I move to approve the minutes.
Okay.
Do I have a second?
Yes.
Yes.
Werner, thank you.
All in favor?
Peter
Aye.
says yes.
Bill?
Thank you.
I'm
Bill
assuming-
says yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
And I'll take a motion to adjourn. I have Beth
Peter,
for
move
the
to adjourn.
motion to adjourn. Peter seconds it from his car as he's driving home. All in favor? Raise your hand. Aye. If you have any questions upon looking at the budget, send it to me, and I will forward it to whatever party it goes to. All right. Thank you all. Good discussion tonight. Thank you for that. We have this list now assigned, and
I'll type that up.
I actually have a sheet that I'm sending out. So I do have a form on that one. Yeah.
All yours.
Have
Good night,
a
everybody. Good
have
night.
a wonderful
Thank
evening,
you.
everyone.
Good night, guys.